they're abusing the system and sort of bringing in medium to low wage workers to
How many of them are at Meta or at Microsoft?
Well, I mean,
or at
listen,
St. Jude Children's Research Hospital or at MD Anderson, where they have people coming in.
I'm not arguing against H-1Bs. I'm just saying the percentage of those visas that go to life sciences is 1.9%. Mathematics and physical sciences, 2.9%. 4.4% go to medicine and health.
Right, but what percentage of the economy is that? It's probably, I bet you it's pretty close to that.
65% of H-1B visas go to computer-related jobs.
Yeah.
In today's video, Abby Phillip destroys Ben Ferguson on NewsNight with Abby Phillip as the two clash over Donald Trump's sudden shift on immigration. Ben Ferguson tries to defend Trump's inconsistencies, but Abby Phillip cuts right through the excuses, grounding the debate in real facts about America's talent shortage, China's growing competition, and why the MAGA stance on immigration keeps contradicting itself. While Ben scrambles to spin the narrative, Abby Phillip keeps exposing the gaps with sharp, undeniable points. So let's dive in and watch how Abby Phillip shuts down Ben Ferguson on NewsNight with Abby Phillip.
Let's talk facts for a second.
There are many people in the MAGA world who think that we just let
reality
too many people in, legal or
Number one economy on earth, the American economy. How was it built? Immigration. Look, after the Second World War, the scientists we brought into this country. We curate the best. We bring them here to create jobs and companies. What's going on right now in policy that I don't agree with is, I teach at Harvard and at MIT and many other colleges. If we curate these amazing students from all over the world, and we bring them into a cohort to train them how to become entrepreneurs in America. They want to stay.
Yep.
If we don't do it,
the
Chinese will.
Totally.
So I'm just saying, let's figure this out. Do we want the Chinese to train them, or do we want them? We want them, every single one of them, to stay here, and I want them to get their passports, and their families get passports, they'll create jobs, and I will invest in them. Every single one of them.
Let me just ask a real quick question. $100,000 per H-1B. Does that make sense to you?
It's nuts. That's a crazy idea.
Okay, let me explain to you about the $100,000, and let me explain to you why Donald Trump has changed his tune on H-1Bs. Because today, he hangs out with the CEOs of the big tech companies, right? They were at the front row of his swearing in. They come to the White House all the time. They're the ones funding his ballroom. They're the ones donating to any pet project that he wants. I'm talking about Tim Cook and Bezos and Zuckerberg and Elon Musk and all of those folks.
All those big Democrat donors.
Okay, all of those folks who have Trump's ear are telling him how important H-1Bs are to their businesses. Right. Why the $100,000 fee? Because there's only 65,000 H-1Bs available in the country every year. And there's almost 500,000 people that apply, companies that apply. What happens now is that the Googles and the Microsofts and the Amazons are going to edge out the community hospitals in rural areas. Amazon is number one. They can afford to pay the $100,000. The rural hospital in Iowa cannot pay.
They're already edging them out. The 13,000 H-1Bs in 2025 so far have gone to Amazon. Meta is behind at 6,000. Microsoft, Tata, Google, Apple, Walmart.
Right now they're all uneven.
If you want,
so
before the 100,000,
let me just raise one more. Let me raise one more thing about this. The H-1B issue, I think, is just one part of this. I think Trump is also trying to spin this now to make it as if it is not actually about the Amazons, the Metas, the Microsofts. Here is Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, talking about who, according to him, is coming in via these H-1B visas, and we'll talk.
This really exposes the fundamental disconnect between Kevin O'Leary's talking points and the actual realities of the US immigration system. Abby Phillip and Ana Navarro aren't just pushing back for the sake of argument, they're grounding the debate in something Kevin keeps glossing over: the way big tech and political influence shape immigration policy behind the scenes. And that matters because Kevin's argument about curating the best minds only tells half the story. The truth is, the US absolutely benefits benefits from global talent. That's undeniable. But the system we currently have overwhelmingly funnels opportunity toward the biggest corporations, not the broader American economy. Studies from the National Foundation for American Policy show that over 70% of new H-1B certifications go to a handful of giant firms, giving them a lock on the labor market and leaving smaller companies, especially in healthcare and research, unable to compete. Abby and Anna are right to highlight that imbalance because it has real consequences for rural hospitals, universities, and mid-sized employers who need those specialized workers but don't have Amazon-level money. Another important point, Kevin paints this idea that rejecting high levels of immigration means China wins. But the reality is more layered. The US already faces massive backlogs in employment-based visas. Some applicants wait 10 to 20 years for a green card because of outdated country caps. So attracting talent isn't the hard part. What's actually hurting the US in the global race is bureaucratic bottlenecks, years-long processing delays, and a system that prioritizes corporate lobbying over national strategy. That's why Abby and Anna's pushback is so important. They're pointing out that Trump's shifts aren't about principle. They're about proximity to power. And when one administration's policies bend dramatically depending on which billionaire is whispering in their ear, it's not immigration reform, it's political favoritism dressed up as economic strategy. And that's the context that makes Kevin's argument fall apart the moment facts hit the table.
I think the president's vision here is to bring in overseas workers where these jobs went.
Who have skills.
Who have the skills, 3, 5, 7 years to train the U.S. workers. Then they can go home, the U.S. workers fully take over.
So do you understand the concern that some people have? Hey, an American could have that job. Why you give it to a guy from India
But an American can't have that job.
So it's specific skills.
Because we haven't built ships in the U.S. for years. We haven't built semiconductors. So this idea of overseas partners coming in, teaching American workers, then returning home, that's a home run.
So, a couple things about that. First of all, the hand-holding was amusing in that clip. But the H-1Bs right now are not going to shipbuilders.
Because we don't build ships here.
Well, yeah,
I mean,
but also
that's why
because
they're not
if
going
you're
there.
building, hold on, if you're building ships for the U.S. military, you're probably not doing it on an H-1B. That's the first thing. But the second thing is they're trying to sort of like shoehorn this policy into their tariff policy, and it's really not that. I do think the H-1B program needs some attention. It needs some degree of reform.
Abby, do you want the next Einstein to come to America or to Shanghai? What do you want?
It's about fighting for talent and people that are brilliant.
I'm not fighting against an H-1B visa, folks. I'm the daughter of immigrants. Both my parents are naturalized citizens of this country.
So you should be for bringing people here.
I am saying there are real concerns that people have about companies that abuse the system.
We're talking about genius, bringing 65,000 geniuses to America.
Kevin, you know that it is not just geniuses. They're abusing the system and sort of bringing in medium to low wage workers to
How many of them are at Meta or at Microsoft? Or at St. Jude Children's Research Hospital or at MD Anderson, where they have people
hold on. I'm not arguing against H-1Bs. I'm just saying the percentage of those visas that go to life sciences is 1.9%. Mathematics and physical sciences, 2.9%. 4.4% go to medicine and health.
Right, but what percentage of the economy is that? It's probably, I bet you it's pretty close to that.
65% of H-1B visas go to computer-related jobs.
Yeah.
What's wrong with that?
What's wrong? It's technology.
All I am saying is that actually, I think you're right.
When you actually step back and look at what Abby is pushing back on here, it becomes really clear why her point resonates with so many people who work in industries affected by H-1Bs. Kevin and Ben keep painting this picture where every single visa holder is some once-in-a-generation prodigy, but the reality is far more complicated, and Abby is the only one acknowledging the nuance. Because here's the thing. Yes, America absolutely benefits from global talent, but pretending the system isn't being gamed is just not honest. Even the Department of Labor has flagged years of cases where companies used H-1Bs to replace US workers at lower wages. Disney and Southern California Edison being two famous examples where American IT workers were literally forced to train their own replacements. That's not an accident. That's the loophole Abby is warning about. And Kevin keeps talking about geniuses, but the data doesn't back up the fantasy. Nearly 70% of H-1B petitions are filed for roles classified at the lowest two skill levels, meaning entry-level, routine, sometimes even clerical tech work. Ben calling it data entry isn't even an exaggeration, it's in the federal breakdowns. That isn't innovation, that's wage suppression. And the irony is, Abby is the one arguing for a smarter system, not a smaller one. Because right now, rural hospitals, research labs, and emerging biotech, the places where shortages are actually dangerous, get squeezed out by massive outsourcing firms that flood the H-1B lottery with tens of thousands of bulk applications. Kevin talks about competition for talent like it's a theoretical game. Abby is talking about the actual people in sectors that get left behind when the system is abused. And honestly, that's the part of this debate that needs way more attention.
There's an argument to be made that more of those visas should be available for rural hospitals, should be available for people in the life sciences, should be available for researchers, should be available to the geniuses in other fields.
So let me go back to the core here.
I think that's a fair argument.
My whole point is, at the end of the day, it's a competition globally, and it's between two giant economies, China and the United States of America.
And I go with America.
And listen, there's nobody else that compares in terms of the size of the economies. Right now, why is Zuckerberg paying $100 million for 10 years for one AI scientist? Because we don't have enough of them in America. Say there's a kid or a woman in Pakistan that is 14 years old that's clearly a math genius.
Yeah.
And we're going to say, no, you go to China and we'll compete with you later. How about we bring them into this country like we did in the 50s? Like, how screwed up is that?
I totally think...
Nobody's arguing against this.
Yeah, I don't know
what
you guys so against Donald Trump changing a little bit on this. You guys are mad at Trump for actually adapting to what we're discussing right now.
I think you're arguing with yourself.
I'm not arguing myself. I promise you. There's the Trump document on this. All right, I'll explain in 5 seconds. The Trump document.
You don't have to explain anything in 5 seconds.
Well, listen carefully and don't interrupt, and maybe you'll get it in 5 seconds.
But hold on a second.
You ready? Let somebody get a stopwatch. I'll make it that simple.
The reason you're arguing with yourself is because we're trying to have a conversation about policy, and you keep wanting to make this about whether Donald Trump is right or wrong.
Because you guys don't understand Trump policy, and I'm trying to explain to you. Trump's policy is simple. When you have 20 million people that break in this country, or 15 million, he doesn't like that. He wants skilled workers to come in the right way.
Was he wrong in 2016 when he was against H-1Bs?
This is literally why I don't understand why you guys hate him so much.
I can give you a list. But I need a lot more than 5 seconds.
And Donald Trump changes and adapts and becomes president.
I don't like him because he's
I know why you don't like him.
Sexual abuser. I don't like him because he's convicted.
I'm going to let Chris have a quick word because
should I continue?
I kind of think that this conversation is sort of going sideways because I know Ben really wants us to be fighting about Donald Trump, but really we're actually trying to have a conversation about immigration policy. So, okay.
Which involves the president wanting more skilled workers.
Let's put Trump to the side for just a second because, again, the only people, I don't know, in this room, maybe there are no MAGA Republicans in this room who are opposed to H-1Bs, but there are some. Nobody disagrees with Trump that H-1Bs are actually a valuable asset. Not in this room, but some people in your party do. Separately, Chris, I wonder what you think of all of this.
Well, I wrote a book about Bobby Kennedy, so we'll get to that soon. We'll get to that soon. I mean, I'm just trying to figure out the vagaries of the MAGA movement. It seems like there are different directions. When I hear J.D. Vance, who I think is a person seeking to succeed Donald Trump, I think that's a fair assumption. He'd like to be the next president, right? Why is he saying, I don't like immigrants, per se?
I don't want to put words in his mouth. He didn't say I don't like immigrants.
No, don't. I'm not putting words in his mouth. He said he's against illegal immigration and legal, both.
There's too many.
He said that's what he said. Don't put it's not words in his mouth. Did he come out against all kinds of immigration?
I think there's a policy movement in the Republican Party to reduce overall immigration levels.
It's wild how Kevin and Ben keep trying to turn a conversation about immigration policy into a loyalty test for Donald Trump, while Abby and Anna are the only ones grounding the discussion in what's actually happening in the real world. And honestly, the facts are on their side. Take the whole competition with China argument Kevin keeps hammering. If he really cared about competing with China, he'd acknowledge the part Abby and Anna are hinting at. The US actually loses top-tier talent when the system is clogged with outsourcing firms pumping in tens of thousands of low-wage applications. In 2023 alone, the government reported that nearly half of all H-1B lottery submissions came from just a handful of companies, most of them outsourcing giants, not hospitals, not researchers, not the next Einstein. That's exactly why rural areas and high-level research programs are starved for visas. And Ben's insistence that these are all technology jobs completely ignores the federal breakdown, showing that over 60% of approved roles fall into level 1 or level 2 wages, the lowest tiers, meaning entry-level work, routine tasks, and yes, sometimes glorified data entry. That's not how you build a nation of innovators, it's how you depress wages across entire sectors. The funniest part is how Kevin frames H-1Bs as if the GOP is fully aligned on this issue. They're not. The modern MAGA wing, J.D. Vance, Stephen Miller, and several House Republicans have openly pushed for across-the-board cuts to legal immigration, not high-skill immigration, all immigration. That's not competition. That's isolationism dressed up as nationalism. Abby and Anna are simply pointing out the obvious. You can support legal immigration and still demand a system that isn't exploited by the biggest players in tech. They're not anti-innovation. They're pro-fairness, pro-strategy, and honestly way more in touch with how this policy plays out on the ground than the guys shouting over them. Pause. Are you getting tired of getting half the story from biased news sources? One outlet says one thing and another says the complete opposite. How are you supposed to know what's actually true? That's where ground news comes in. It lets you compare how different media outlets, left, right, and center are covering the same story. So you can see the full picture instead of just the echo chamber. And here's the best part. Click the link in the description and get 40% off the Vantage tier, which gives you even deeper insights into media bias and political trends. Stay informed, think for yourself, and check out Ground News in the description down below.